All right, hello there. Welcome to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. All right, I'm really excited today to share with you my thoughts on a recent release from the Criterion Collection. It came out early in 2024, and it is a collector set from Criterion of 9 films from Belgian director Chantal Akerman. It is Chantal Akerman's Masterpieces 1968 to 1978. These are 9 films from the first decade of output from Belgian director Chantal Akerman. And in this video, I'm going to share with you what I think about this collector's set. I'm going to talk a little bit about Chantal Akerman's background and these 9 films, and just my overall impression of this set and whether or not this is a edition you ought to consider picking up. We have some upcoming sales, potentially at Barnes & Noble, future flash sales, future opportunities to get some good deals on Criterion Collection titles. Should the Chantal Akerman Masterpieces 1968 to 1978 be one of those pickups? We'll talk about it on the other side of this. Chantal Akerman Masterpieces 1968 to 1978. This is a nice looking collector's set from the Criterion Collection. And when it was announced, I was very excited because the only film of Chantal Akerman's filmography that I had seen up until this point had been her film from 1975, really her masterpiece, her magnus opus, Jean Dman 23 Quai du Khmer 1080 Bruxelles, which is an absolutely amazing film. It's over 3 hours long, and it was recently voted the #1 film of all time in the BFI Sight and Sound Survey. Now, that is debatable. I'm not sure if I would put it to that level, but it is an absolutely amazing film, and it's gotten a ton of recognition since that recent poll. So this is a collector's set of 9 films, and I'm going to read the 9 films right here. They are Saute-Meville, Les Enfants, Amis ou Les Jeux, and so forth and so on. La Shambre, Hotel Monteray, Les 15/8, J'ai tout et elle, Jean Dman 23 Quai du Khmer 1080 Bruxelles, News from Home, and Les Randevu de Anna. So those are the 9 films that are included in this collector's set. And they have varying lengths all the way from like 12 minutes to 3 hours plus in the case of Jean Dman. And they're all very fascinating works that really showcase the filmmaking style of this Belgian director. So a little bit about Chantal Akerman's background. She comes from a Polish family, a Polish Jewish family that was impacted pretty heavily from World War II, the Holocaust at that time. And her maternal grandmother, unfortunately, was killed in one of those concentration camps. She was imprisoned in one of those camps. She was an artist, so she rendered a number of artistic works and paintings. And her daughter, Natalia, who is Chantal's mother, survived the Holocaust. And she was able to memorize her mother's paintings and artwork and was able to pass on those memories to her daughter, to her daughter, Chantal. So Chantal Akerman's mother, Natalia, survived the Holocaust and was able to pass on the memories of her mother's paintings to her daughter, Chantal. So it's Chantal's grandmother's paintings that served as a big inspiration for her work, in part because those paintings depicted the ordinariness of everyday life. That's a theme that sort of plays through a lot of Chantal Akerman's films. If you watch her films for the first time, you're just thinking, like if you're watching Jean Dman, you're thinking, okay, this is a movie about a housewife doing regular daily chores. What's the plot? What's going on in this movie? And really the point of it is showing the beauty of everyday life, just showing the beauty of ordinary, regular activities of living, which is part of her artistic style. And that plays through a lot of her other films. And it was inspired by her grandmother's, in part by her grandmother's paintings. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Let me get a drink of this water here. A drink of water would be interesting because my mouth and throat were dry. But let me read the back of this case here. Here it says, Chantal Akerman Masterpieces, 1968 to 1978. In the revolutionary first decade of her filmmaking career, Chantal Akerman devoted herself to nothing less than the total resculpting of cinematic time and space. Journeying between Europe and New York City, Akerman forged a highly personal style that fuses avant-garde influences with deeply human expressions of alienation, desire, and displacement. Themes that she would explore in a series of increasingly ambitious shorts, documentaries, and features, including the towering Jean Dman, 23 Quai du Camer, 1080 Bruxelles. With immersive rhythms that rendered the most minute details momentous, these landmarks of 20th century art continue to reveal new ways of experiencing cinema and framing reality. So, yes, great summary of these works. And of course, if I can get this open here, this is what it looks like. You take the box off here, but this is what it looks like on the inside here. You have this front cover, this back cover, pictures from the various films, all 9 films listed down here, which is terrific. On the inside, you have 3 discs, which spreads the 9 films across 3 discs. And I believe the second disc has the Jean Dman film. And then, of course, you have this nice, fairly decently sized book here. If I can get it in the frame here. Pretty decent size, which has some wonderful, pictures. This has some great sections in here. So it starts off with this wonderful essay, The Weight of Being by Beatrice Loaiza, which is absolutely phenomenal. It talks about her background and talks about her grandmother's influences upon her. It talks about how she got into filmmaking, which is terrific. It's got some great pictures in here. So, I mean, overall, I'll just come out the bag and just say I really did enjoy this set because it just does a nice job of presenting these 9 films that began her career, the first decade of her career, and just shows how she presents each of these films. So it has a section for each of the movies. Sainte Maville, which Chantal Akerman played herself in. You have La Enfant Amie ou Je joue à être une femme Maria, the second film. La Shambre, which also features Chantal in here. Fascinating stuff. Hotel Monteray, which is really interesting. It's basically showing scenes from a hotel in New York City, showing the regular, everyday moving and goings about of the denizens who stayed in that hotel during a period of time. You have Les 15-8. Je tu il elle, which are also Chantal plays in this film as well. The incredible Jean Dman, which is included in this set. I actually had this separate edition of it, but I recently gave that away to a friend because I now have a copy of Jean Dman in this set. News from Home, which is so good, so good. And finally, Le Randevu de Anna. So this book contains a nice write-up and summary of all the 9 films, a great essay by Beatrice Loaiza, The Weight of Being, and just some fantastic pictures. And on these 3 discs, you have the films. You have the 9 films, and you have a pretty nice set of supplements, a few documentaries, some shorts, a visual essay, some interviews. And so it makes for a pretty nice supplementary package. But let me talk a little bit about each of these films. So up here you have Sainte Maville, which was her debut. Is a very short film about a young lady in her kitchen. It's sort of the anti-Jean Dman. It's basically her in a kitchen messing things up and basically making a mockery of the orderliness of life. And it's a pretty interesting take on things. The ending of her first film, Sainte Maville, was inspired by this film here, Pierre Le Fou, by Jean-Luc Godard. So this was a huge inspiration of Chantal Akerman's filmmaking, this film right here. So in in Sainte-Maville, this is Akerman's debut short film. You have a young woman disrupting the order of her kitchen, metaphorically challenging societal expectations of domesticity and feminine identity, infused with dark humor and unsettling imagery. That unsettling imagery has to do with the ending of the film, which is very, very stark. I'm not going to spoil it, but it was inspired by the ending of this film right here, Pierrot Le Fou, and it will definitely wake you up for sure. Then you have this second film, Les Enfants Aimés au Jeju, and I don't speak French yet, but basically this film is about exploring the boundaries of personal identity against the backdrop of expected societal roles, providing a sort of a whimsical yet profound dissection of gender dynamics. So that was a nice film as well. And the really nice thing about this set is it starts off with these two films, which are relatively short, which I think is really good to sort of get your feet wet, to go in there with just a few short films before getting into longer films. Then it goes on to La Shambre and Hotel Monteray. Oops. La Shambre and Hotel Monteray, with La Shambre, encountering, it's really a situation where you have Chantal Akerman here laying on this bed in her Parisian apartment, and the camera moves around the room and rotates around the room several times. And you see Chantal in different positions each time, but it just takes into account what is in the room and just gives you a very minimalist tour de force, if you would, of the circling gaze of a camera in a single room. And it's a very interesting looking film. So it just provides, it challenges one to, think introspectively and to think about the impact of solitude and the nature of personal space, I think is part of what is being communicated there. And it's just marked by Akerman's characteristic slow cinema approach. So it's a camera that's just circling around the room. It's very interesting. It's not a long film. It's only a few minutes, but that's La Chambre. And then you have another film, Hotel Monteray, which is basically a silent observation of the people who were inhabiting a New York City hotel. It's a documentary that captured the elusive rhythms of its spaces and people and offered sort of a voyeuristic glimpse into the denizens as they moved in and out of the frame, and just showing them in their transient nature, and it's basically a voyeuristic type film. A camera fixed in one place and people coming in and out of the frame, moving about their day in New York City, living in this hotel. Then you have Les 15-8 and Je tu il elle. And Les 15-8 basically presents a fragmented view of urban existence. It weaves a sensory symphony of imagery and sound that encapsulates the vibrant, sometimes chaotic essence of city life. And then Je tu il elle was a really interesting film. This also has Chantal Akerman playing the main character, and she basically blurs the boundaries between autobiography and fiction in a bold examination of human connection and detachment, featuring extended monologues and minimalistic setting that intensify the emotional landscape. So you have Chantal Akerman in this film, Je tu il elle. She's interacting with this man that she meets outside of her apartment, and then she comes back and has an encounter with another woman. And it is a very fascinating look and character study in this film, Je tu il elle. Very, very fascinating. And then we come to, of course, her masterpiece, Jean Dillman 23, Quai du Camer, 1080 Bruxelles. This is a film by Chantal Akerman. This is the cover of the single release edition on Blu-ray that came out several years ago. I had it, and I pass it on to a friend of mine because a copy of this film is in this set. And this is basically 3 hours plus showing life showing the life of this housewife who has a son. She goes about her daily activities, her daily chores, sits down and eats dinner with her son. She also makes money by basically turning a trick with Johns who come by her apartment. And that basically is a lot of what the movie's about. It shows her in a perfect setting, going about a perfect existence. But then over time, that perfection begins to erode over time. And you see cracks in the armor of her carefully crafted existence. And you see the impact that fracturing of that perfected space, what that does to her by the time you get to the end of the film. And it's pretty shocking, to say the least. So that's Jean Dillman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. It's a long film. It's the kind of film that you really have to be in the right mindset to really be able to sit down and appreciate and just have the time to absorb it. Maybe a film you need to absorb in two sittings. That's Jean Dillman. And then News from Home, which I thought was very interesting because this is the film that's about Chantal Akerman moving to New York City, beginning to build a life in New York, but then reading letters from her mother, Natalia, who was still over in Europe. And her mother was a bit manipulative, I guess, in the way she was communicating, which was very interesting, hearing the readings of her mother Natalia's writings to her from back from home. So thought that was really interesting. And while those writings from her mother were being read, you see scenes throughout different places of New York City. So is hearing her mother's letters with the juxtaposition of seeing different scenes in New York City, which is very, very beautiful presentation in this film. And then last but not least, you have Le Randevu d'Anna, which is a very interesting film that dives into those themes of love and isolation and connection. And Akerman used a number of long takes and pretty sparse dialogue to accentuate the emotional isolation of the protagonist in this film, to showcase her very masterful command of mood and atmosphere. And that is definitely something that Chantal Akerman was a master of in the time that she was with us. So those are the 9 films that are showcased here in this set. Chantal Akerman Masterpieces, 1968 to 1978. From a video presentation standpoint, I mean, you get new 4K digital restoration of La Randevu d'Anna and 2K digital restorations of Sainte Mobile, Les Enfants, La Shambre, Hotel Monteray, Les 15 to 8, J2, John Dillman, 1080 Bruxelles, and News from Home. And then you also get uncompressed monaural soundtracks. I found the presentations of these films, of course, there are 9 films. They all looked pretty good. I can't remember any particular film looking horrible or looking bad. I think they all looked pretty good overall. I mean, you had 2K restorations of most of these films, a 4K restoration of La Randevu. And so these films look pretty good. They look pretty clean. And I thought the presentations were all fine. Did any of the presentations blow me away? Not really. I thought they were all perfectly fine, clean, digital restorations of these films. And I thought they were very well presented on Blu-ray. And I thought the audio came across well as well. Of course, a lot of these films don't contain an incredible amount of dialogue. So you're just seeing things going on within the physical space. So you have some sounds that are taking place either in the space or outside coming in. And those sounds came across quite well, whether you're talking about Jean Dillman or you're talking about News from Home or any of the other films. I thought the sound was perfectly fine. So from a video and audio standpoint, I think, this set is definitely a plus. It is not mind-blowing, but it's not poor either. It's really just fine. Really nice presentations. As far as the supplementary package, I think that this package contains some really nice supplements, because one of the things that I walk away with from this set is, do I walk away feeling like I learned something about this director? Do I know a little bit about who Chantal Akerman was. And I would definitely say yes. I mean, I learned about her background. I learned about her inspiration to filmmaking. I learned about her filmmaking style. It really gave me an appreciation for, having only seen Jean Dillman, 23 Quai du Khmer, 1080 Bruxelles, having only seen that film of hers up to this point, it gave me a greater appreciation for why that film was made in the way that it was made. And of course, one of the features on here is a very nice, almost a making of, a 1 hour plus making of, showing Chantal Akerman with Delphine Seyrig. Was her name Delphine? I think her name was Delphine, who played Jean Dillman. Seeing her on the set, giving her direction, talking through different scenes. They show a good hour of that footage, and it's absolutely fascinating to watch that behind the scenes filmmaking. And there's other interviews as well. There's an interview on here with her mother, Natalia, which is great to see Natalia's perspective on her daughter's filmmaking. And there's other wonderful interviews. There is a fantastic discussion on here that's new. It's a program featuring B. Ruby Rich that I highly recommend listening to, because she talks about Chantal Akerman's filmmaking style, talks about the relevance and importance of this first decade of her output, and just really shares a lot about her experiences, because she actually met Chantal Akerman back in the 70s and knew Chantal Akerman. So hearing from her was pretty awesome. You also get to hear from Miss Mangold, who was the cinematographer for some of Chantal Akerman's films. So that is awesome to hear from her as well. And you also have this Hanging Out Yonkers, an unfinished film from 1973 by Chantal Akerman, which is basically silent film. And it just shows these young people in Yonkers who were part of I think a juvenile discipline type situation. She shows footage of them. And yeah, I mean, I think overall you get a very nice supplementary package that, combined with the essay and the writings in here in this booklet, just shares more about her background and just tells you a lot about each of the films. So I think as a total package, this is a very compelling package from Criterion that I walk away feeling like I've learned a lot about this filmmaker, and I just have a better connection to her work. And it definitely inspires me to see more of her films. Of course, these are from 1968 to 1978, but I walk away feeling inspired to learn more about the works of Chantal Akerman. But let me know in the comments section below, what do you think about Chantal Akerman's films? What do you think about her cinema? What are some of your favorite works from Chantal Akerman? What are your impressions with her filmmaking style? And just let me know if you plan on picking up this set from the Criterion Collection. I would say it's definitely worth it, especially on a 50% off sale. If you're interested in learning more about a filmmaker and diving into the works of a director, I can definitely give a strong recommendation for Chantal Akerman Masterpieces 1968 to 1978. I think that the presentations of these films are fine. The supplementary package is fantastic. And I just think you walk away feeling like you know a little bit more about Miss Chantal Akerman. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace.